Well, hello everybody. We're back. We are still doing our videos of the walk through the Bible. We're doing one video a month. Been a little slow in getting some of these to you. We're going to try to fix that and get these to you on a more timely basis. This month, of course, we're in the book of 1 Samuel. You should be fairly familiar with the book of 1 Samuel since Carl is going through a series on that right now. Let's just do a little rehash of where we are and a couple things we can look for in the book. First of all, of course, you remember, big picture is thinking through the fact that we are reading through the Bible, and the story of the Bible, greatest story ever told, begins with God's creating man. I know it sounds like I'm going to take a long time to get there, but trust me, I'm going to go quick here. God created man, and man rebelled against him. And we read in Genesis 12 that there's a time, this is after many hundreds of years, that God selects a man, Abraham, to be the patriarch of many nations, saying that all the rebellion going on the earth is now going to be addressed specifically through this one man, Abraham, and his faith in God, that God is going to redeem this man for himself. And those that are related to him, and we'll see there's both a physical and a spiritual relationship there that becomes more clear as we go through Scripture. But those who are related to him are going to be identified as God's people. Well, we see this. Abraham has children, and eventually we see a remnant of his family, a portion of his family now, several generations back, who have now been in the land of Egypt. And this family begins to grow. And it grows and grows and grows, and eventually now becomes perhaps a couple million people. But they're in Egypt, and Egypt is not a land that is friendly to them anymore. Originally they were. And now Egypt has enslaved them, and all these people are enslaved. And God, remembering his promise to Abraham, whose people these are, now says it's time for you to come out. And so God arranges the Exodus through the prophet Moses. And they go through the Red Sea, and God saves them miraculously and brings them to their promised land. But they are too intimidated by it. They look and say, oh, it's too much. We can't handle these people. It's scary. And so God puts them on a journey, 40 years for all of the adults to die and for the children to grow up, and to give them a second chance as his people now to go into the promised land. And he brings them into the promised land. We read about all that in the book of Joshua. Well, now they're in the promised land. Well, who are the leaders? Well, for a period of time, it was the judges. Around 400 years, the judges were the ones that ruled. These are men that God raised up. And we see a cycle over and over and over in the judges of these people of God, again, descendants of Abraham, who have rebelled against him and who continue to rebel. And then God allows these marauding armies to come in and to take them captive. And then they are repentant and they call out to God again, and he saves them through a judge. This goes on 7 times in the book of Judges. And now we come to the book of 1 Samuel. The book of Ruth, of course, was in there as well, but I'm going to skip over that for now. There's already been a video on that. We're in the book of 1 Samuel, and now in the book of 1 Samuel, we see that God is now going to bring them a king. This is something that God had told them they would do. They didn't do it out of faith in God. They did it out of a desire to be like the other nations. I mean, God grants their request, and he gives them a king, the kind that they think they want. Big, handsome, tall, strong king, but he is what he's in his stature, he lacks in his character and his integrity, and he turns out to be a very poor king. Well, also in this book of 1 Samuel, we see the coming of this king. We see the second king, and that's the King David, one that people would look at and think, him? Really? And of course, we learn the lesson here that God looks at the heart, not at the physique, and not at what people would find desirable. Obviously, a very big lesson right there for all of us. The second part of Samuel, not 2 Samuel, but the second part of 1 Samuel, has to do with King David. Now, King David has married into Saul's family. David, of course, you'll read about David and Goliath in this book. Fantastic story, fantastic historical narrative. An actual event that took place of a small man who trusted in God, and God blessed him in that trust and that faith that David had in him. And what happens? Well, we see David now becomes the favorite of the people. And we have this very interesting play now between the people who look at David and say he's the real warrior and Saul isn't. And Saul feels his popularity slipping, and he feels that the people are now pledging their allegiance to David rather than him, and he resents that. So the rest of the book is how Saul is now going to be interacting with David. What's the lesson I think that we can learn here? And there's actually a lot more than what I'll just point out here. But one that's a particularly of interest to us is we have here Saul, who is an unjust king, drawing parallels to our own times. And I'm not speaking about necessarily even our current president, although I think this would apply. But what is it like then for the Christian to live in the context of a ruler who is decidedly ungodly and who does things that are ungodly? How should they live? And David gives us a great picture of that. David, who is trying to submit to his authority because he understands that Saul is God's appointed authority, and he will not take advantage of the fact that he's popular or that he's stronger or that he even has opportunities to take Saul's life. He says, I won't do it. And he gives us a great example of godly character in the context of an oppressive government. So think about that as you go through the book. And again, try to draw some of your own lessons. And if you find some, tell Carl or myself or Scotty. We'd love to hear some of the things you're learning as a family. Well, enjoy your read through 1 Samuel, and we'll look forward to seeing you when we talk about 2 Samuel next month. Take care.